Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've always been passionate about photography and videography. It's been my hobby since I was a kid, and I even went to college for it. But finding a stable job in that field, not so easy. That's why I ended up working at this retail store. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills. When I first started, I thought, hey, why not use my skills to help the business? So I began making these cool videos, showcasing our products and posting them online. At first, everyone loved it. My coworkers were super supportive, telling me how great the videos were. Even customers would come in saying they'd seen our stuff on their social media. Things were going great until we got nominated for some local business award. That's when it all started to go downhill. The general manager asked me if I could handle taking updated photos for the award submission. I agreed to help out even though I should have asked to be paid for it. I didn't want to rock the boat, which turned out to be a big mistake. A few days later, the general manager came storming up to me, demanding to know where the pictures were. He said he needed them right away. I explained that I was still editing them and they'd be ready soon. He rudely told me to hurry up, saying we didn't have all day. There was no please or thank you, just attitude. That's when I decided I was done doing extra work outside my job description. Weeks went by and I stopped making videos. Then one day, the owner approached me and asked why I hadn't been making videos lately. I told him I hadn't been feeling amazing. My boss overheard and chimed in, saying I better start feeling amazing soon. The entitlement was unreal, but it got worse. Today my boss cornered me again. He told me he needed 3 videos this week, and one of them had to be done today. I pointed out that a please and thank you would go a long way for my motivation. He sarcastically asked if I would please do it so the general manager would get off his back. I suggested that the general manager could use some manners too, but my boss dismissed that idea. I just smiled and agreed. A few minutes later, as I was heading to make the video, my boss walked by and thanked me again in the most sarcastic tone. I did make the video though. I uploaded it to our shared folder and even texted him a screenshot of it there. But then I deleted it. I planned to act dumbfounded when he inevitably came back saying it wasn't there. I'd wonder aloud where it could have gone, then show him as I uploaded it again. As soon as he'd walk out, I'd delete it again. I was prepared to keep this up as long as it took. The next day, just as I predicted, my boss came storming over to my workstation. He demanded to know where the video was, saying it wasn't in the folder. I pretended to be confused and concerned, checking the shared folder on my computer. I confirmed it wasn't there and acted surprised, insisting that I had definitely uploaded it yesterday. I offered to do it again for him. I uploaded the video file once more, making sure he saw it appear in the folder. He told me to make sure it stayed there this time. I assured him I would, acting like I had no idea what could have happened. As soon as he walked away, I deleted the file again, smirking to myself. This went on for days. Every time he'd come back, I'd act surprised, upload the video, and delete it as soon as he left. It was petty, sure, but it felt good to give him a taste of his own medicine. After about a week of this, my boss finally lost it. He demanded to know what was going on with the videos, saying they kept disappearing. I feigned ignorance, suggesting there might be something wrong with the shared drive. He got frustrated, telling me he needed these videos for our social media. That's when I pointed out that if the videos were so important, maybe we should discuss proper compensation for the extra work involved in creating them. I reminded him it wasn't part of my original job description. His face turned red as he realized what had been happening. He accused me of deleting the videos. I calmly explained that I was just doing what he asked, and he never specified how long the videos needed to stay in the folder. He called my behavior completely unprofessional. I countered by pointing out how unprofessional he and the general manager had been treating me, with no please or thank you, just demands and sarcasm. He stood there, sputtering, unable to form a coherent response. I made it clear that, if he wanted me to continue making these videos, we needed to have a serious discussion about respect and compensation. Otherwise, I'd stick to the duties outlined in my original contract. The boss stormed off, but I could tell my message had finally gotten through. The next day, I was called into a meeting with him and the owner. They apologized for their behavior and offered me a raise and a new title that officially included video production duties. I accepted, but I also made it clear that I expected to be treated with respect from that point forward. And you know what? Things actually improved after that. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself to get the respect you deserve. My husband and I decided to relocate from the city to a quieter neighborhood for our son's sake. We wanted him to grow up in a place with more space, fresh air, and a tight-knit community. Little did I know that this decision would make me the target of some seriously bizarre accusations. We've been living here for about 6 months when it happened. Our next-door neighbors were throwing a birthday party for their kid in their backyard. I could hear the excited squeals and laughter of children from my kitchen window. Part of me felt a bit sad that my son wasn't invited, but I brushed it off. We were still new in town, and I figured we'd make connections eventually. As I was preparing lunch, I noticed dark clouds gathering in the sky. It looked like rain was on its way, which was pretty common for this time of year. I didn't think much of it and continued with my day. About an hour later, I heard a loud banging on my front door. When I opened it, I was face to face with my neighbor. She immediately started yelling at me, accusing me of causing the rain on purpose to ruin her daughter's birthday party. I was shocked and tried to explain that I couldn't control the weather, but she wouldn't listen. The neighbor continued her tirade, suggesting that I was some kind of witch because of where I was from. I attempted to reason with her and assure her it was just bad luck. However, she refused to believe me and accused me of seeking revenge because my son wasn't invited to the party. I tried to explain that wasn't true and that I understood we were new in the area, but she cut me off. Before I could say anything else, she declared she was calling the police and took off. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers showed up at my door. I invited them in, hoping to clear up this misunderstanding quickly. The officers awkwardly explained that they had received a complaint about me causing it to rain. I assured them that I didn't have the power to control the weather and denied the accusation about ruining the party out of spite. The officers seemed uncomfortable with the situation but explained they needed to follow up on all complaints. When I asked if I was going to be arrested for making it rain, they clarified that they weren't going to arrest me but suggested I try not to make it rain in the future. I couldn't believe their apparent willingness to entertain such an absurd accusation. The officers then suggested I apologize to my neighbor to keep the peace. I refused, stating that I had done nothing wrong, and that this was discrimination based on where I was from. Realizing they were in over their heads, the officers decided to leave, saying they would file their report. Feeling angry and determined, I decided to take action. The next day, I went to the police station and filed a formal complaint against my neighbor for harassment and false accusations. I also reached out to a local community organization that deals with discrimination issues. Word spread quickly in our small town. Many of our other neighbors, who had been friendly but distant until then, started coming by to offer their support. They were appalled by the accusations and the police's handling of the situation. A week later, I received a formal apology from the police department for their unprofessional behavior. My neighbor, however, doubled down on her accusations, which only made her look more ridiculous to the rest of the community. In the end, her actions backfired spectacularly. She became known as the weather witch hunter in town, and people started avoiding her. As for us, we found ourselves welcomed into the community with open arms. Sometimes it takes a little rain to help something beautiful grow. First, let me tell you about my aunt. She's the sweetest person you'll ever meet. The kind of lady who'd wear a "kick me" sign just to give someone else a break. She's always been there for me, baking cookies and giving the warmest hugs. Now my mom, she's the opposite. Cold, calculating, and not one for sentiments. Somehow I ended up with a mix of both their personalities. I'm nice until I'm pushed too far, then watch out. About 12 years ago, my aunt joined this online forum for corgi lovers. She didn't actually have a corgi, she had a toy poodle, but she adored the breed. The forum was mostly older ladies sharing cute pictures, swapping stories, and supporting each other. It was harmless fun. and it made my aunt happy. Enter the antagonist of our story. Let's call her Karen. Karen was a corgi owner who thought she owned the forum. She didn't. She had this idea that only corgi owners should be allowed. My aunt's beloved poodle? Not good enough for Karen. At first, Karen would just make little jabs here and there. Nothing too obvious, but enough to make non-corgi owners feel unwelcome. My aunt, being her usual sweet self, just ignored it. I didn't know much about all this until I got 2 emails one day. The first was from my uncle. He warned me about some drama on my aunt's corgi forum. He explained that Karen had said something mean to my aunt, and when my aunt asked her to stop, the whole forum erupted. He described it as being like a virtual tea party gone wrong. He also mentioned that Karen had somehow gotten hold of my aunt's email list and sent a nasty message to everyone. My uncle told me that my aunt was really upset and didn't want anyone to read the email. He added that my mom was there trying to comfort her. Now my uncle telling me not to read something is like waving a red flag in front of a bull. So of course I opened Karen's email. It was the pettiest, most pathetic attempt at bullying I'd ever seen. Karen's message essentially accused my aunt of being a wannabe corgi lover with fake niceness and trash picture edits. She even suggested that everyone who knew my aunt in real life should teach her to know her place. If it wasn't aimed at the kindest woman on the planet, it would have been laughable. But Karen knew her target. She knew my aunt wouldn't fight back. That's where I came in. I crafted the most sickeningly sweet, condescending response I could muster. In my reply, I addressed Karen as if she were a teenager, expressing understanding about how hard it can be when drama comes between friends. I pointed out that, given her behavior, she must be about 16 and had a lot of growing up to do to understand how adult relationships work. I told her that her fixation on such small, strange things was something she'd look back on and laugh about when she was older. I also explained that using someone's online passions to try and harm them in real life was not only dangerous, but showed a lack of maturity, experience, empathy, and grace. I went on like this for a while, treating her like a child throwing a tantrum. Then I ended it by spelling it out clearly. I told Karen to fuck off. I hit reply all and waited. About half an hour later, my phone rang. It was my mom laughing so hard she could barely speak. When she finally calmed down, she told me what happened. She explained that my uncle had received my email and told my aunt it was from me. Apparently, my aunt was mortified at first, thinking I'd be mean, so my uncle read it privately. My mom said he was laughing by halfway through. Then he printed it out and read it to her and my aunt. My mom told me that my aunt kept asking if I knew Karen was in her 60s. My mom couldn't stop laughing. She said my uncle even delivered the final insult with perfect venom, and it was the only thing that cheered my aunt up. A few days later, I got the final update. Someone on my aunt's contact list was also on the forum and posted the whole email exchange. The forum loved it. They rallied around my aunt and banned Karen for her behavior. My aunt's still on that forum, still loving corgis from afar. And me? I'm the favorite niece now. Though to be fair, I'm the only one. Looking back, I'm glad I stood up for my aunt. Sometimes, you need to fight fire with fire. Or in this case, fight pettiness with extreme condescension. Karen learned her lesson and my aunt got to keep her online friends. All's well that ends well, in the world of virtual corgi drama. I've been a clinical nurse in physical rehabilitation for over a decade now, helping people recover and regain their independence after injuries or illnesses is incredibly rewarding. I've worked my way up to charge nurse, overseeing the night shift at our facility in Australia. It's a challenging role, but one I take pride in. Our unit sees all sorts of patients, from elderly folks recovering from hip replacements to younger patients relearning to walk after car accidents. It's not always fast-paced, but there's always something to do, always someone who needs care. That's why I was so shocked by this one resident doctor's attitude. Now most of our junior doctors are fantastic. They're eager to learn, compassionate and hardworking. But this guy, he was something else entirely. It was a Thursday evening when I first overheard him. I was just finishing up my shift handover when I caught his whiny voice coming from the doctor's lounge. I heard him complaining about how boring it was and that there was nothing to do. In a hospital, of all places, I peeked around the corner and saw him speaking to the consultant and registrar. They looked uncomfortable, but didn't say much. The consultant tried to suggest reviewing patient files, but the resident dismissed this, saying he'd already done that and calling the place a snooze fest. I bit my tongue and walked away. If he was so bored, maybe he could, I don't know, spend time with the patients, learn their stories. But no, apparently that was beneath him. Fast forward to a couple of days later. We had a patient, let's call her Mrs. J, who was suffering from acute gout. The poor woman was in agony. Her pain medication order was running out, and we needed it recharted. The night before, we'd had to call the emergency department medical registrar for a phone order because there were no spaces left on her chart. It's not ideal, but sometimes it happens. But during the day, that's when the resident is supposed to take care of these things. I approached him about Mrs. J's medication. I politely asked if he could rechart Mrs. J's pain relief order before leaving. He mumbled a half-hearted agreement, saying he'd get to it. I thought that was that. Imagine my surprise when I came on for my night shift and found a sticky note plastered on Mrs. J's chart. It instructed us to call the ED Med Reg for a phone order if she had pain overnight. My blood was boiling. This guy who was so bored couldn't take 2 minutes to write up a proper order. Instead, he was pushing his work onto the already overworked emergency department. Sure enough, Mrs. J needed pain relief that night. I had no choice but to call the ED Med Reg, the same one from the night before. When I explained the situation, the ED Med Reg seemed confused and slightly annoyed. He asked if the day team hadn't written up a new order. I had to explain about the sticky note, which was met with a long, telling pause before he agreed to give me the order. After getting the order and helping Mrs. J, I stewed over the situation all night. This resident's laziness and attitude were affecting patient care. Something had to be done. The next morning, I made sure to mention the incident in my handover report. I also sent an email to the head nurse and the consultant detailing what had happened. To my surprise and relief, things changed quickly after that. When I came in for my next shift, Mrs. J had a proper medication order written up. In fact, all the patient's orders were up to date. A few days later, I overheard a conversation in the hallway. The consultant was speaking to the resident, explaining why his actions were unacceptable and reminding him of the patient's reliance on the medical staff. The consultant suggested that if the resident was bored, he should find ways to help rather than pushing responsibilities onto others. The resident acknowledged his understanding and promised it wouldn't happen again. The consultant then told him he should apologize to the night staff and the ED. From that day on, we never saw another sticky note like that again. The resident's attitude improved too. He started spending more time with patients, asking questions, and actually engaging with his work. In my book, there's no room for entitled attitudes when people's health is on the line. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.